And the third category is positive evidence. And so two things that are advanced often are personal experience or revelation and the Bible. So, it's often said you feel the presence of God. And that is then taken as an evidence that God exists. Now, we all know that our senses can be easily betrayed. I mean, we all know these optical illusions. And then there's confirmation bias that leads us to accept and to believe things that we want to be true. And I don't deny the existence of spiritual experiences. Meditation can certainly bring about an altered state of mind. But depending on the cultural context, dreams, apparitions, and other spiritual experiences are interpreted quite differently. Do Hindus ever feel the Holy Ghost? Or Christians, the presence of Brahma? Believers all over the world have similar revelations about quite different gods. And therefore spiritual experience, individual spiritual experience, is not reliable evidence for one particular God. Personal experience cannot count even in principle as convincing evidence because it is not shareable, and thus violates one of the key requirements for evidence. Now, coming to the Bible. The Bible is often cited as evidence for the existence of God because of its miracle stories and/or its divine authorship. Now, Christianity hinges on the claim that the accounts given in the Gospels are true. Now, the problem is they were written decades after the ministry of Jesus. They were copied, translated, selected. Can we trust them as convincing evidence? And I say, even if we had multiple eyewitnesses, this would not be enough. There are people living today that claim divine origin. There's the South Indian guru, Satya Sai Baba. And you can see videos of him on YouTube. And he is considered to be a God man. He has 6 million followers. He performs miracles. He materializes objects. He's doing levitating acts. He has hundreds of eyewitnesses. He even has resurrected people, again with eyewitnesses. So most of us remain unconvinced, even in the face of these extraordinary miracle stories and hundreds of eyewitnesses. Carl Sagan, that you cited, also said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So, but we do trust the second-hand accounts given in the Bible, written in the 1st century, without any further evidence? Isn't that applying a double standard? Okay, so maybe we don't have good evidence that the miracles really happened. But maybe we must believe the Bible because it contains so profound truths that proves its divine authorship. The Bible contains many wonderful things, like the Golden Rule, for example. But so do other holy books, the Quran. And the Golden Rule is actually not specific to the Christian religion. So, but these books also contain really horrible things and plain stupid things as well. Now, in evaluating these books, we cannot really just cherry pick the things we like and ignore the bad stuff and the contradictions. So we cannot take the content of the Bible or the Quran as evidence for its divine origin. So looking at the Bible, it very much seems as if it was authored by people with limited knowledge at the time. So neither are the miracles in the Bible well supported by convincing evidence, nor is there any good reason to assume the Bible is the Word of God. The Bible is a book like the Quran, the Torah, or the Vedas, and there is no good reason to assume it is correct and all the other holy books are wrong. In conclusion, Michael has argued for the existence of God. I have argued that there is probably no God. We probably agree on one thing. Only one of us can be correct. And the emphasis is here on can. And because we can both be wrong, it could be, so I assume Michael is arguing in favor of the Christian God. So it could be that Islam is right, or Judaism, or Hinduism, or Buddhism. And this points to a very important asymmetry in our arguments and our positions. So arguing for a personal God, in particular a Christian God, it is not enough to show that there is any kind of God, but you have to show that he has specific features. You have to show that your particular God exists and instead of all the other proposed gods. This is a quite difficult task and demands a lot of evidence, which I have argued is simply not there. A Christian can easily reject Allah and find the evidence for Islam insufficient. Similarly, for Brahma and Hinduism, Poseidon and all other Greeks and Romans and thousands of other gods. In the same way, all Muslims, Hindus, followers of other religions, find it just as easy to reject Jesus and identify the flaws in the Christian religion. As I have illustrated with the example of Poseidon, we all have no problem implying the reasoning that I have outlined here. We can easily deny the existence of gods by applying rigorous reasoning and demanding convincing evidence. Taking this principle of reasoning based on convincing evidence seriously, applying this principle consistently, and taking it to its logical conclusion simply means to go one tiny step further and deny not only the existence of all but one, but all personal gods. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Erwig. We will now begin the cross-examination period. During this time, each speaker will have opportunity to question each other. Dr. Erwig, would you please start us off?
This works now? Yeah. So let me see, I wrote down quite a few things here. So let me start with this one. So your main arguments seem to have been that there are a lot of things that need explaining, a lot of things that we can't explain very well at this point. And you mentioned consciousness and the cause of the universe, and you also, there was some argument of design. And we can talk about these individual questions later on. But then your conclusion was, well, because there are so many things that we can't explain, therefore God must exist. And that is the traditional God of the gaps argument. And by consistently closing the gaps, the need for God will be smaller and smaller. So I think this is over time, this is a losing proposition. Don't you agree?
No, I disagree.
I knew that answer.
Yeah. And I'll leave it to the audience to judge whether I appeal to ignorance in terms of the God of gaps argument. I think, once again, what I'm appealing to is things that we know about the universe. That we know that the universe has a beginning. At least we have a high degree of evidence to support that. So it's not a lack of evidence, it's because of the evidence that we have, and what's the best way to explain it. What I'm suggesting is not, oh, if you can't explain something, God must have done it. What I'm saying is, which of these views, naturalism and theism, that's why I kept it generic in terms of theism, which one is best able to explain, say for example, the beginning of the universe? Which one is best able to explain consciousness?
Okay, so let's maybe go first to consciousness. So you say, well, we can't explain consciousness right now.
No. I'm not saying we can't explain consciousness. What I'm saying is what we know about consciousness is not explainable naturally.
Well,
in other words, that we cannot reduce conscious states down to physical brain states.
Well, I think people disagree on that.
Well,
right?
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's not an argument.
So many people say that consciousness is a function of the brain. And neuroscience, research in neuroscience seems to confirm that many aspects of consciousness are actually, can be reduced to functions of the brain.
Well, I think, and let me respond to that, in the philosophy of mind, in fact, I think it's becoming a growing opinion, and not just among theists, but even among naturalists. To cite a couple examples, John Searle at Berkeley, Colin McGinn at Rutgers, both of them would tell you that in fact we cannot, and it's not because we don't understand consciousness, it's what we do understand about consciousness. In fact, I would assert that we understand consciousness as individual subjects better than we understand almost anything else. And it's that inability to capture that in terms of brain states that says these are not just brain states, that brain states are correlated to them, but they're not just brain states.
Okay, so I don't really want that to digress into a philosophy of the mind discussion, which we could have at another time. But since you mentioned two people, I can just give you two names that argue the opposite, namely Susan Blackmore and Daniel Dennett, for example. They have a naturalistic explanation. And there's a lot of theoretical problems with dualism. The existence of zombies, of mutants, Descartes' homunculus, they lead to severe problems in the dualistic notion of the mind. So, but the bottom line is, why does God explain consciousness better than taking a scientific approach and trying to understand better and better in small steps what we know about the brain, its function?
Yeah, let me first of all, I don't think you have the right to assert that your approach is scientific. I'm appealing to just as much scientific evidence based upon what we do know about brain states. And once again, and maybe we can talk more about Daniel Dennett and these guys, but what was I going to do with this? I think it's important that, see, what you're doing is you're begging the question. You're assuming that the only legitimate explanation is naturalistic. And what I'm saying is, no, let's take a look at what the evidence points to. We just can't beg the question in favor of naturalism. And let me just point out where you do that. For example, you said the only evidence has to either be directly observable or indirectly observable. Well, the arguments I gave, which are very standard arguments, they're very well known, and I noticed that you didn't deal with them at all. And of course, I mean, you didn't know what I was going to present, but it's interesting to me that in your arguments, you never once cited any of the well-known proofs for God. I mean, typically, when you look at theistic arguments, most theist arguments are not going to focus on the Bible, because I would grant you that the Bible is a implication, not a basis for belief in God.
Okay, so so we do have to talk about the so-called God proofs. So let's then talk about the causation argument there.
Are you talking about the cosmological argument, just for clarity?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you said, well, the question is, what caused or who caused the universe, right? And then you dismissed the question then, who caused God? Well, you advanced the proposition that there must be something that we call God who caused the universe. Well, and your point was everything has a cause. And
no, I said everything.